Mrs. Snyder says that she conceived her child during a wild threesome with Mr. Evans and his ex-girlfriend. Today, she thinks that it is wrong for Mr. Evans to deny her daughter. Mr. Evans, on the other hand, says Ms. Snyder is just trying to pin a baby on him. Here is how that crazy case goes.
Ms. Snyder, you claim today's DNA test will prove that the plaintiff is Laney's father, and you need him to step up and help support your daughter. Is that
Yes, Your
correct?
Honor.
So, Mr. Evans, you say you're certain this is not your child.
I'm absolutely certain.
Explain.
So the baby doesn't look like me from the get-go. Like, as soon as I saw her, I was just like, she don't look like me. She doesn't have my nose, she doesn't have my eyes, like.
Let's all remember that we are talking about a literal 2-month-old baby here. Mr. Evans is telling us that a 2-month-old baby does not look like him. That is where his doubt stems from. Seriously? Wow. But it gets better, guys. It gets much better.
So I was downtown playing drums, and so she walks up to me, and I see her, and she's, looking at me, and I'm just like, okay. And she's like, starts giving me those eyes, and I'm like, okay, I know that look. And then she starts, dancing a little bit, and then started flashing her boobs. And
No one did it.
Wait, what?
Yes, you did.
That's a lie.
Yes, you did.
Okay, so you're playing drum.
Yeah.
She comes up, you all make eye contact.
Yes.
Of course you're thinking this is great. Why wouldn't you? She is dancing on you, showing you all she has, and also making you more money. So it obviously ends there, right? You didn't do anything more with her that day, right?
So then I get a phone call from my ex saying that she's at my house right now. She brought a guy over because he lost his job. He needed a place to stay. And it was the only place that she can think of to bring him. And I'm just like, okay, fine. But just know that I'm like, at this point in time, there's this girl dancing on my lap right now, and I'm bringing her
You
home.
didn't say that part.
Yeah, folks. All of this happened on the very first day that Mr. Evans met Ms. Snyder. The very first day. And we all know what happened after his ex walked into the room. They had some fun and ended it there, right? Not quite. Let's take a listen.
So I'm talking to my ex. I'm like, you've had me long enough. You need to learn how to share. And I told Amanda.
Oh,
like,
you start getting the lingo together.
I suppose. I mean, it just kind of came in the moment.
Oh, okay. And then what happened?
I was like, Amanda, do you know how to share? She goes, yes, I know how to share. And I go, all right, well then, y'all get along, be nice, play fair, let's have a good time.
Wow, that is a really wild ride. They were together without protection for a whole week, and now he wants to deny that the product of that extremely careless behavior? Well, it isn't looking good at all, Mr. Evans, but it gets even worse.
Well, I was just like, okay, well, I'm pretty sure at that point I thought it was my baby. And I'm just like, all right, I'm thinking it's mine because I didn't know that she was, may have been with somebody else or anything like that. I'm thinking that time that we were together was I was the only person that she was with and, conceived during that time. And so I'm like, oh yeah, it's fine. If everything goes as planned, I'll be there when the baby's born and everything like that. But work kept me held up, so I didn't get back until sometime in January.
So Mr. Evans wants us to believe that he was actually all for being a present father, but then he saw the baby, and he somehow looked into the face of a newborn and decided that she didn't have his features? Let's learn more.
Miss Snyder, who's this other person you slept with?
I do admit I slept with someone else, but we also used protection, and it was what would have been after the conception date, though. It was like a week or two afterwards.
All right, and so how did you meet this guy that you slept with?
I had been knowing him for a little bit. We did use protection.
There has been another man involved all along? Wow. Mr. Evans might just be saying the truth then. If there is another possibility, he is right to doubt that he is the father of this baby. Anyway, Judge Lake tracked the other man down, and here is what he has to say.
I admit sleeping with Amanda, but I did use a condom. The condom did not break, so I know that baby is not mine. So this statement, it basically is in line with your testimony, that you did have sex, but you did use protection. You don't think he's the father. He doesn't think he's the father.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, that makes sense. And now we are back to Mr. Evans being the father of the child. Now that Ms. Snyder says the conception calendar is also on her side, it looks like all the evidence points to Mr. Evans. Here is what he thinks about that logic.
So, Mr. Evans, now that you see this calendar, are you pretty convinced now? Has it changed your testimony? Do you believe you are Laney's biological father?
No, he's not mine. I'm not the father. I do not believe that I am the father.
Well, we have heard enough. Mr. Evans does not think that he is the father, and Ms. Snyder disagrees. From all the facts we have, it seems that Mr. Evans should be the father. Let's see what the DNA test thinks of that logic.
Mr. Evans, you are not the father.
Aspiring rapper Mr. Hunt wants proof that he isn't the father of Jazia. He says that Ms. Tinsley, Jazia's mother, is a gold digger who just wants to share a part of his fame and his fortune. Ms. Tinsley thinks that is total nonsense. Here is how that crazy case began.
Mr. Hunt, you have petitioned the court for a paternity test to prove that you are not the father of Ms.
Yes,
Tinsley's 3-year-old daughter, Jazia.
Yes, Sean.
You say that she is a gold digger and that your relationship with her was
gold digger.
No, I'm
brief
not. No, I'm
A gold
and
digger.
purely
No, I'm not.
sexual.
Okay, let's unpack this. Mr. Hunt says he is a successful rapper, and that is why Ms. Tinsley wants to pin this baby on him. Ms. Tinsley says he is the second potential father, and since the first already had a DNA test, he must be the father. Let's see what Mr. Hunt thinks about that.
Yana, I'm more in my city
He's
where
not
I'm from. I'm like the hottest rapper around. Not to be sounding cocky,
He's
toot my
alright.
own horn, but I'm on radios. I do shows for any major acts coming to the city. I'm doing
He
my
ain't making
thing.
no
She's a
noise like
groupie.
that, though. No,
She's
I'm
a
not.
groupie.
Far from a groupie. Never
She's
been a groupie.
got nothing going for
Never been a
herself. She's
groupie.
dead broke.
Mr. Hunt is pretty sure that Ms. Tinsley is only with him for the money and even says she is a groupie. Ms. Tinsley says that is a total lie and even accuses Mr. Hunt, the big and supposedly famous rapper, of being broke. Someone has to be lying here. Let's find out who.
I met her, a few years back, but I only hooked up with her one time.
That's a lie.
One-
We had sex
only
several
one time.
times.
One time.
We had sex several times, actually, Your Honor.
With several other guys. What about them?
I'm single. I don't got no man. I ain't married.
Now, this was just a one-night stand
She's
kind
a
of
jump
thing?
off, Yana. She's a groupie. That's what
I'm a
she
jump
do.
off. I'm a groupie, though. I'm a groupie all of a sudden.
Where? Mr. Hunt has been to jail in the intervening period? I thought he was some big shot rapper. Does he still even have a rap career? Anyway, this case gets even crazier. Let's take a listen.
Miss Tinsley, you
believe her.
contend you had sex more than one time.
Yes, ma'am, we sure did.
It
At
was a
least
sexual
no more than
relationship that was
5.
ongoing?
No, it was like over
kind of drugs are
a
you
couple
on?
of month period.
She's
Like
None,
a
I'm
couple
sober.
months. But what you also admit to is that you were having sex with someone else during
Yes,
that very
ma'am, 'cause
same
I
time.
was single.
And that makes it a lot better. She has just 2 kids by just 2 different men, and she isn't on great terms with any of those men. So if she has one more kid, it would have to be with another man. But that's not too bad, is it? Anyway, here is where Ms. Tinsley thinks.
The blood test came back. I told you, Marcus. I said, you Marcus, if the blood test come back negative with my ex-boyfriend, you the next possibility. Cool, everything's cool. Then people start finding out what was going on. Then that's when he thought he's a big rapper, which he ain't
Relax.
making no noise. You local, you not even on.
Relax.
I'm in Atlanta with it. You still in Louisville with
Miss
you
Tinsley,
local.
hold on one second. How did everybody start finding out about it?
But that doesn't make any sense. You literally just called her a groupie. She cannot be a groupie if she'd slept with you before you even got hot in your city, right? This case is about to get even more complicated.
When did you get the DNA test from him? How soon after
It was
the
a couple
baby
of years later
was-
when we got into it. He demanded a test, so I got it. And then it came back negative. But he still loved my daughter. He was still helping my daughter. Still to this day, I call him. He'll send me some money, Western Union, if I need.
This is such a crazy case. Mr. Hunt and Ms. Tinsley are both making very wild claims that are impossible to prove. These guys should have at least some evidence for these claims, right? Let's hear what Mr. Hunt has to say.
She came to the club with the baby?
Yana, I kid you not. She came to the club with the baby on her arm yelling, "You are the father, this is your baby. Why aren't you taking care of your baby? You're a deadbeat dad."
I cannot believe what I'm hearing.
So that didn't happen. Miss Tinsley, you never
I
showed
never
up to
had my baby
Yana,
at the
not
club.
only the club though, Yana.
Phew. This is a lot. Both Mr. Hunt and Miss Tinsley have serious personality problems that they need to solve. For one, it seems the only reason Miss Tinsley did this test is so that she can keep the welfare checks coming. That's insane. Does she even care if her child has a father? Let's hear from Mr. Hunt's mom.
I've been single many times, Your Honor, but I didn't sleep with multiple men because I was single. And I'm not telling her how to handle her business. But if that's her choice, all I'm saying is strap up because you could come up with more than just a baby.
Okay, but I
You
do
could
wear
come up with more than
condoms.
just a baby.
Only got 2
We're
kids.
testing for DNA, but we might need to test for STDs.
Wow, that is a lot coming from another woman. But you cannot seriously say she is mistaken, can you? The fact that another person had been tested and wasn't the father just shows that there could be other potential fathers. Anyway, the DNA test result is the key to this mystery. And here is what those results say.
Mr. Hunt, you are not her
Thank
father.
you, Jesus.
Ms. Clary thinks that her son inherited a certain blood condition from Mr. Asinado's Italian blood, so he has to be the father. She also says that Mr. Asinado owes her $15,000 in child support, and she wants him to pay her what he owes. Mr. Asinado denies all claims and says that Ms. Clary has lost her mind. Here is how that case began.
Miss Clary, you are petitioning the court for a paternity test to prove to the defendant that he is the father of your son, Gage, who has multiple medical needs. You say Mr. Asinato owes you $15,000 in child support, and you demand he pays you what he owes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh no. That is what we like to call a rookie mistake. You don't sign your name on birth documents if you are not 10,000% sure that the baby is yours. Because if it turns out the child isn't, you will still be on the hook for child support. Mr. Asinato didn't get that memo. But it gets better.
She made me believe that the child was mine by saying that she was only with me.
You did sleep with her?
I did, yes, ma'am.
You thought you were exclusively together, girlfriend, boyfriend, committed?
No, ma'am. She was married at the time.
Your Honor, no, when we first met, we both were married. When we both met, we were separated. I wasn't with my husband for a year and a half.
That is just insane. Mr. Asinato moved in next door and literally started sleeping with his neighbor's wife? But, you know, it's all good because Ms. Clary was separated at the time, right? Somehow she could be separated from her husband for 3 years but couldn't get a divorce. But hold on, this story gets better.
We were hanging out next door. We were all friends, hanging over there shooting pool, drinking, having watching movies, and everybody left except for me, and one thing kind of led to another. He made a pass at me, and...
So you began a sexual relationship?
Correct.
And how long did it continue before you found out you were pregnant?
That was in 2007. My son was born in 2011.
Phew, that is a lot. So they kept this up for a long time, while Ms. Clary's husband literally lived next door? There are a lot of crazy cases that have come up on paternity court, and this has to be one of the craziest, and it is about to get even crazier.
I do know for a fact that she was with somebody else.
Oh, what do you know?
I know Crystal. Crystal was married when she came to my house on the first night.
But you
slept
know,
with
Your
me.
Honor, this other gentleman he's talking about, while we were not together, I was dating somebody else, and we split up 2 months prior to me getting pregnant with my son.
You know things have gone horribly wrong some here in your life if you have to say that you have never actually been with someone you are having a paternity dispute with. You had a fling for 8 years? Really? No one is buying that. Miss Clary has this interesting theory for why Mr. Asinato is denying her child.
Did your doubt set in, and why?
Gage had a lot of medical problems when he was a baby. He had colic, he had ear infections, he had multiple problems. He had
2 weeks in the
infections.
hospital. Mr. Asinato never once called, never once showed up. He called maybe twice the 2 weeks.
Now that makes a load of sense. Mr. Asinato seems to be denying this kid because the child gets sick a lot. Don't know if you heard, Mr. Asinato, but your bloodline doesn't come from Olympus. Your kids can probably get sick too, but it gets even more ridiculous.
My son has thalassemia, which is a medical condition that comes from Italian. It's a Mediterranean descent. He is full-blooded Italian. I'm Native American.
Hold on, Miss Clary, go back and explain this to me. Your son has a medical issue that he deals with called
Thalassemia.
thalassemia.
And it's an inherited, it's a genetic blood disorder.
Yeah, that is awful evidence as well. You cannot say that a child belongs to someone just because they have an illness that Italians predominantly suffer from. That sounds very weird. But this case is about to get even more interesting.
I need to hear more about your doubt.
My doubt is the child looks nothing like me at the time when I had this doubt. This was last December.
Your Honor, my son
okay?
looks just like me.
Last December,
and, last I checked, I was his mother. See, that's my how can you not love that baby? You know, in fact, a friend of mine sent me an app to try.
Wow. Horrible evidence after horrible evidence. Ms. Clary is really grasping at straws here, isn't she? Now we are supposed to believe some app? Really? Nobody even knows how that works. Here is how Mr. Asinato demolishes that evidence.
I'm sure if I picked out somebody from the audience and sent that
Your Honor,
in
he's
with her
very
engaged,
talkative, very
it would
charming.
be
He's one of
same
these types that can
percentage.
con an alley cat out of a tuna dinner. I mean, he's very charming. He's very, you know, he's gonna make you believe anything you want to believe. I loved you for some stupid reason.
While Gage may know Mr. Asinato as his daddy, the man may not actually be his father. The only way to put that question to bed is through the DNA test results. And here is what this results say.
Mr. Asinato, you are not his father.
This is a strange case because Mr. Webb thinks he is the father of Mrs. Forrest's child. That would not be too complicated if Mr. Forrest, her husband, wasn't also claiming to be the baby's father. Here is how that crazy case begins.
Mr. Webb, you have been waiting 2 years for this day. You claim the defendant, Mrs. Forrest, left you for dead only to find out once you got out of a coma that she was pregnant and that the baby could be yours or her husband's.
Yes, Your Honor.
Wow. There are a lot of strange dynamics on paternity court, but this is a seriously crazy one. Mr. Webb is really trying to get a child away from a married couple, and he thinks that this DNA test result will somehow help in that quest. How did this insanity even begin?
Ms. Forrest, how did you get yourself in this triangle?
My husband got in some trouble, and I ended up meeting Mr. Webb through one of my friends. We hit it off, and then I ended up leaving Mr. Forrest for Mr. Webb.
So you began a sexual relationship?
Yes, Your Honor.
The fact that Mr. Forrest is in court today to listen to this case is just insane. Very few men would stand by their wives during cases like this. He must really love her. Anyway, back Mr. Webb's testimony because it is insane.
She was admitting that she also had slept with other people.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you think the other person was just her husband?
At the time, no, Your Honor.
You thought there were other possible?
Yes, Your Honor.
No.
And why would you think that? Why would you have reason to think that?
Because she was working that time and some of her check would be coming up missing every time she would get paid.
No.
Wait, hold on a minute. Mr. Webb really thinks that Mrs. Forrest got off work and then used 45 minutes extra to cheat on him? Really? Is that actually what he thinks happened here? But it gets even more complicated if you can believe it.
So this is a statement from your mom?
That is a statement from my mom, and he was there the very next morning in a motel with her.
Is that true?
We were already broke up. We've done called it quit. We done called it everything.
Me and my wife had
a lie,
already
Your Honor.
started talking back.
That's insane. According to that letter, Mrs. Forrest dumped Mr. Webb while he was in a coma fighting for his life. That is an extremely cruel thing to do. But why is Mrs. Forrest even sleeping with other men while she's married to someone else?
Which I loved Mr. Webb at the time, but we were...
You loved him?
Well, I mean...
So when you
My
realized you
feelings
were
that-
pregnant, when exactly did you realize you were pregnant?
The middle of September,
That is a
All
lie,
right.
Your Honor.
because I didn't know at the time I was pregnant.
You know what? That is sound logic, which is really rare in paternity court. Mrs. Forrest sat down, did her calculations, and came to the conclusion that her husband, who she is now with, has to be the father of her child. Mighty convenient, isn't it? Let's see what Mr. Webb thinks.
The thing about it, Your Honor, is the day that before I went on to life support, we did have sex.
Well, that was the question I was about to ask. What day did you go into the
I
hospital?
went into the hospital on August 26, 2012.
So you saying August 25th, you all were intimate?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is that correct, Ms.
Yes,
Forrest?
Your Honor.
Without protection?
Yes,
Yes,
Your Honor.
Well, now, Mrs. Forrest, you are changing your argument. First you said that the dates made you sure, and now you are saying the looks are the reason you're so sure? It looks like Mrs. Forrest just wants this baby to belong to her husband. And who can blame her? That would be the more tidy arrangement, wouldn't it? Here is what Mr. Forrest thinks.
Facebook, his family, to let them know, but why do that if you know for certain that Mr. Forrest, your husband, is the child father?
Just in case that he did come back being the father, he could say that
He wasn't there for the birth.
he wasn't there. I
So
had
the
difficult
truth
labor.
is, even you had doubt.
At first in my pregnancy, yes, Your Honor.
And that is the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It is obvious that Mrs. Forrest just wants her baby to belong to her husband. She isn't sure of anything, and her evidence is all over the place.
Miss Forrest, that you've been blocking Mr. Webb from seeing
Yes.
Elena.
Yes, Your Honor.
After you initially informed his family that where she's gonna be born.
He wasn't there. I had a difficulty of labor. I had a seizure.
Wow. That is heavy and cruel if he indeed turns out to be the father of this baby girl. That is why it's just better to keep the kids in the wedlock. Anyway, it is time for the big reveal. Who is the father, Mr. Webb or Mr. Forrest? Let's see.
Biological father is Mr. Webb.
Mr. Page insists that Ms. Brooks' baby doesn't belong to him. He says the baby actually belongs to her friend, a man named Tony Wilson. Ms. Brooks says this is absolute nonsense and Tony Wilson isn't her baby's father. Here is how that case starts out.
Ms. Brooks, you state that after getting out of a 9-year relationship, you met and fell in love with Mr. Page, a younger man who you say swept you off your feet. You claim both you and Mr. Page planned to have a child together, but since giving birth to your son, Ivion, Mr. Page is now denying the child you so desperately wanted to have with him.
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, okay. It looks like both Mr. Page and Ms. Brooks have their own issues that they need to deal with outside the courtroom. But today, we are talking about a paternity doubt. Let's see why there is a paternity doubt in the first place.
It's her not being home when I come home at night with her and my son being around Mr. Wilson, her friend. That's what it comes from.
This man, Mr. Wilson, was he the ex you were in a 9-year relationship with?
The ex that I was in a 9-year relationship with was a female. That means I had no penetration whatsoever in 9 years.
Yeah, Mr. Page. Bringing up a female ex in a paternity case is just you being unserious. The only ex we need to talk about here is the male one. And that ex, Mr. Wilson, is in court with us today. But hold on, this case gets better.
It's just a picture, like.
Right, and that's the next
And
one that I
then-
got right here, Your Honor.
These are all photos of you,
All dedicated to
Mr. Wilson. That's the baby in there?
Yes.
But that's just a picture of me and the baby, though.
Okay, and we are supposed to believe that they are just friends? Really? Is that the argument here? That this is just a regular friendship? It looks like Mr. Page has a really good reason to doubt that this relationship is just platonic. But hold on, it gets spicier.
That's a lie. I was there. I waited till he was born and I left. I had to go to work. I can't call out 2-3 days in a row thinking I'm gonna still have a job. They don't care about that, so I had to go to work.
I'm afraid to ask this, but after Mr. Page left, did Mr. Wilson make an appearance?
Yes.
Really? Are they still just friends? Or does Ms. Brooks expect us to believe that Mr. Wilson doesn't think he might be the father of the baby? Well, the obvious question here seems to be whether Mr. Wilson and Ms. Brooks got intimate at all. And here is what Mr. Page thinks.
He's walking around telling them that they're having sex and all this.
He's saying what?
That they're having sex.
Who's
Friends,
he telling
rumors.
this to?
Mr. Wilson does go around lying to people and saying that he had sex with me. I did not know that at first. I recently found out. Me and him
I heard
had
it
a
from
problem
her.
with
I
each
heard
other.
it from
Of course,
her.
I told him this because
And they're
I'm
still
upset about
best
this.
friends.
Because
they
but we
never
were
had
in the
sex,
out
Your Honor,
first.
but they're still best friends.
Wait, what? So Mr. Wilson goes around telling everyone he is sleeping with Ms. Brooks, and she has somehow not yet cut him off? That is crazy talk. And the fact that she expects Mr. Page to believe nothing is going on there is crazy. But it gets worse.
Mr. Wilson, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome, Your Honor.
Please describe for the court your relationship with Ms. Brooks.
Oh, we're still best friends. That's like one of the fellas, you know. That's my homie, except for she a female.
So you're best friends.
Yes.
What is your relationship like with her son, Ivian?
Well, I'll be honest, that's my godson.
Oh, two things. First, Mr. Wilson says the baby isn't his. And secondly, it looks like there is no love lost between these two. But Mr. Page doesn't believe this version of events at all. He thinks Mr. Wilson is lying, and here is why.
People, Mr. Wilson, that you're Ivian's father.
Your Honor, yes. See, what happened was, it was this girl I was dealing with, and to make her mad and make her jealous, because she had an issue with Miss Brooks because her hair was long, and she wear tracks, and Miss Brooks has on fingernails, she has on press-ons. I was just making her be jealous.
Wow. Okay, Mr. Wilson, aka baby father. This case just gets crazier anytime these guys open their mouths. On one hand, we have Mr. Wilson, who says he isn't the child's father, but clearly has the hots for Ms. Brooks. And we have Mr. Page, who is, well, Mr. Page. And now, Judge Lake asks the crucial question.
You were not sleeping with him, never slept with him?
No, not at all.
But he's telling people you have.
Right.
He's telling people he's your child's father, and you telling Mr. Page he's not the child's father.
But Your
that's
Honor-
where his doubt.
But Your Honor, I knew.
Every time I go to work, my son go over his house.
I think we have heard enough. It would be really shocking and awkward if it turns out that Mr. Page isn't the father of this baby, wouldn't it? Because there is no way she has been lying throughout this K, right? Let's see.
Mr. Wilson, you are not the father.
Told you.
Mr. Page, you are the father.
Told you. Told you.
Ms. Hyman wants to prove to Mr. Brown and his family that her kids belong to him. She says that he has to be the father, and he is just running away from his responsibilities. Mr. Hyman thinks there is zero chance that is true. Let's see who is lying here.
Ms. Hyman, you're here today to finally prove to the defendant, Mr. Brown, and his family that he is the biological father of your 4-year-old son, Landon.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Brown, you are adamant that you are not Landon's father and say you won't do a thing for the child since he's not yours.
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, so he's been put through the ringer once before. That kind of makes sense. If you have gotten a negative DNA test once before, you'd think twice before providing for a child that might not be yours. But Ms. Hyman has other ideas.
Okay, so you've had a past experience. I'm still trying to figure out what exactly is your doubt based on.
Because from
None.
Yes.
None.
If they
None.
coming to me saying
My son
that
looks
that
just
he's
like him.
another man's baby,
None.
and then 2 months later, then
None.
it's mine, what would you do?
So
Your Honor,
people,
Your Honor, there was
people are
none.
coming to you and saying it's another man's baby.
Well, that makes sense. But Mr. Brown also needs to realize that the fact that a previous child wasn't his does not mean this child isn't. That is the point Ms. Hyman is trying to make. And then the story gets more complicated.
And then you going through another, you would not go through that twice.
Okay, if you wouldn't go through it
No,
twice.
my point is, in addition to that, we've established that you've had a previous situation.
And I wore
What
condom.
I'm asking you.
You
in
a whole
addition
lie. We
to
never
that-
wore. You ain't used no condom with me, but one time,
Your
boy,
Honor.
why is you sitting right here lying
Your
like that?
Honor,
I
wore
wish you would stop lying.
Well, it is very obvious that there is no love lost between this two. Mr. Brown thinks there is a chance the baby isn't his, while Ms. Hyman thinks he is just a dirty, nasty little liar. But let's get into the details of this. Has Mr. Brown ever even asked for a DNA test?
Asked for a DNA test when it was brought to my attention.
Lie.
If I already went down there to take a DNA test, already, you really don't need me to go down there to go get a DNA test. All you got to do is just go down there, take a child down there to do a DNA test. Correct?
Well,
don't need
you
my
would
DNA.
also have to
Has he-
submit
okay, then.
DNA.
So
Okay,
after I already
Your
submitted my
Honor,
DNA, so why so hard to
So
go
have
do a
you
DNA test?
submitted your DNA?
I've been submitting my DNA.
Exactly. If both of them really wanted a DNA test, why did they never get one? What is up with that? That doesn't make any sense at all. But this case is about to get even worse because there is a witness here. Let's see what she has to say about this case.
Your Honor, my whole thing, the young man that she's claiming that knows, that said they knows person, I didn't start messing with this man till the end of February, beginning of March. This man was not nowhere near me and him.
So why, the rumor was he was the father before anybody even told me I was the father?
Phew. I've got to say, Ms. Hyman is very convincing. At this point, you kind of doubt every argument that Mr. Brown is making because she is making his story look pretty dumb. But hold one, it gets worse. Let us get into the dates.
When were you all last involved
The week of
sexually?
Christmas.
Christmas week. At what point did you all stop being intimate and you had relations with someone else?
Me and this young man, we really never stopped being intimate. We still dip and dab every now and then.
Oh, of course he still dips and dabs. In fact, he will probably continue dipping and dabbing even after this case, no matter what the results are. Anyway, Ms. Hyman says Mr. Brown was the only person she was intimate with during the conception period, so this baby has to be his. But let's learn all about this dipping and dabbing business.
2010, we still dip and dab
She
then.
was dipping and dabbing in something else too.
But
Okay,
hold
but
on,
okay, if
hold
you
on.
think
When
I
you were
was, no,
dipping
you
and
was
dab-
dipping and dabbing in this.
Hold on, Miss Hyman. When you were dipping and dabbing with him in December, were you also with somebody else? You
Nope.
said January, February, or February, March?
In February and March.
In February, March.
I was
But you-
already pregnant then.
But you said Landon was born in October.
October.
Mr. Brown says it doesn't add up, but it could very well add up for him as they still dipped and dabbed during Christmas. Women don't always give birth on the 9th month, you know. Anyway, was Ms. Hyman really just having unprotected sex with anyone? Really? But she has some other arguments.
Down to the case of my son looks nothing like this other man. This other man is 5'2". My son doesn't have no facial features, no anything as this other young man. My son has the exact same birthmark on the same side as this young man. My son has the same lips, the ears, the eyes, the nose. He has my nose, the chin.
Your Honor, looks don't mean nothing. You can think about a person so much that a child can come out looking like that person.
Well, Ms. Hyman thinks her kid looks so much like Mr. Brown that his paternity should be a foregone conclusion. Mr. Brown thinks that is absolute nonsense. I guess we have to get the DNA test result to know who is right or wrong. And here is what that test says.
Mr. Brown, you are not the father.